Again, welcome everybody to our webinar. This is a National Garden Bureau webinar on new houseplants for 2023. I'm Diane Blazek. I'm the Executive Director for National Garden Bureau. I have with me Gail Pabst. She's at the other end of our small little building here. So she's doing all the work behind the scenes. What I wanted to do is introduce our panelists first. But before I do that, I wanted to let you know, just for visibility's sake, if you click on the upper right and put it on speaker view, I think you might have a little bit better experience. That way you will get to see the person who is speaking and a little bit less confusing than having a big gallery view. So with that, I do want to introduce our panelists. These are NGB members. So first we have Justin from Costa Farms and Heather from Doom & Orange. So Justin, do you want to introduce yourself and tell a little bit about your company, and then we'll switch over to Heather.
Sure. Good morning, everybody. My name is Justin. I am with Costa Farms, the largest houseplant grower in the world. We are based in Miami, Florida. And we grow about 1,500 different plant varieties. Costa Farms has been in business for 61 years, and we're still run by the Costa family.
Awesome. Only 1,500 varieties then, huh?
Only,
that's all. Yeah. Thank you, Justin. Heather, would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself and your company?
Yes. Hello, everyone. My name is Heather. I work for Doom & Orange. I'm the North American product manager for their succulent and foliage lines. Doom is a multinational company, but the headquarters is in the Netherlands, which we all know the Dutch kind of, I think, invented horticulture and greenhouse production and then brought that over to the rest of the world. Doom has a lot of different product lines under their umbrella, from annuals, perennials. I manage the succulents and the foliage, which also includes under that umbrella, we have anthurium production and orchid production.
All right. Covers a lot of territory there. So that's wonderful. Before we get into our PowerPoint that shows some of the newer varieties from both of these companies, as well as a couple other of our NGB members, I thought I would ask a few questions, just kind of what is new happening in the houseplant world. I mean, through the pandemic, we just saw the explosion of interest in houseplants. We heard the stories of certain rare varieties selling for thousands. So maybe you two can both just lend a few insights on what's happening in the houseplant world, flowering houseplants, foliage plants. I kind of lump them all in one. Maybe I shouldn't, but I do. You guys can separate them if you wish. But also talk about what you as breeding companies and growers are working on. You know, what are you looking for? What's in demand? That was a lot of questions that I'm throwing at you, but if you guys can just take a few of those, and I'm sure I'll have more questions as we go along.
You can go first, Justin.
Oh, thank you, Heather. So the biggest thing that we're watching for, looking for, of course, is a plant that anybody can grow in their home. The easier, the better. And when we talk about easy plants, you know, we really talk about having the widest range of tolerances in terms of moisture, in terms of light, in terms of humidity. You know, because if we find this amazing plant that's super fussy and only an expert can grow it, it's really not a good experience, and so we don't move forward with it. Beyond easy care, we're always looking for variegation, because variegation is super hot, especially with the plant enthusiasts. It seems like nobody can get enough of especially white, silver, gold, and pink in plant leaves.
That's interesting you say that. I was down at TPIE, not this year. That's the tropical plant exhibition that's held, excuse me, down in Florida every January. And when I was there a year ago, I felt like I was seeing a lot of the really, really dark foliage, like the black foliage or dark purple or really, really, really dark green. And then this year, when I saw some of the things coming in, I was like, wow, it looks like things have shifted to white foliage a little bit more. And I don't know if that was my perception or if you can comment on that, either Justin or Heather.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a trend, wanting to see brighter colors, because the darker colors in decor are inside in a corner, they get lost and you just can't see it. And even like up against like a green background, they can still just turn into like negative space. So yeah, the bright colors are definitely a trend. That your apple greens, even like chartreuse, is really kind of taking the center stage right now with like your golden pothos or your limelight and things like that. Of course, going into this this presentation, I was like, what are all the designers saying? You know, so I'm like reading online about what they're all saying, and you know, big bold foliage is still really important to have those big specimen pieces. Not necessarily like a ficus lyrata or something, but they were saying like strelitzias and bananas are about to have their big moment, and some of the things in Justin's part of the presentation really show that trend coming on board.
So bigger is better then, you know,
Bigger is better, but
yeah.
not a ton of big things, just maybe like your big accent, and then you fill in with the more colorful foliage around it.
And I think it still holds true that some of the smaller things are attractive also, you know, like, you know, your desktop, you might want a small little peperomia or something on your desktop. Just, you got the big over there in the corner, and then you've got the small one right in front of you. So it's all good.
Absolutely. You know, it's like, you know, it's like anything in design. You don't necessarily want everything the same size.
That's true. Yes.
And with a lot of especially plant people, I find that there's a leaning toward getting plants as small as possible so that you can have the experience of nurturing it and the pride. You know, because if you start with a plant in a 4-inch pot and you get it 6 feet tall, there's a lot more to that than if you buy it already 6 feet tall.
That's right. It's that sense of accomplishment. I mean, anybody who gardens indoor or out, there's accomplishment is such a satisfaction. And so, yeah, I see that too. It's like when I take that little bitty thing and I get to upsize it in a new pot, I'm like, whew, I was successful for a couple months. At least I got to repot it. Yeah, that's good.
Exactly. Yes. So much of plant ownership is about experience rather than just having something.
Yeah, that's true. One thing I forgot to mention in the very beginning. So if anybody has any questions or comments, certainly put them in the meeting chat. I will be monitoring our chat. And what I will do then is if I see a question that I already have like in my list to ask, I'll hold on. But if it's a question that I hadn't thought of, then I will be asking our panelists of that question. Justin or Heather, is there anything else that you want to talk about that's kind of trending, or some of the things that you guys are looking for or working on before we go into our actual presentation of some of the new varieties?
Well, I want to do a little bit about the pride of ownership, or the pride of growing. I mean, I take pride in just keeping them alive because I travel a lot for work. So I feel like when I, you know, have everything set and I can ignore them for like 2 weeks or something and come back and they're still looking good, it's like, yeah, you know, I've got this. As far as like breeding efforts, or what we're looking for, is just trying to stay ahead of what we think people are going to want, because and I think we might have touched on this last year, just because it takes so long to bring a plant to market. I mean, it's like a 2 to 3 year investment for the companies, and to do that and know, or have a feeling, or do the market research that, okay, in 3 years this is what people are going to want. I mean, there's some risk to it. So it is a lot of market research. And my dog just ran in here. I'm so sorry. It is a lot of market.
We can't see your dog. That would be excellent.
Lost my train of thought. There's a lot of market research that goes into it, and risk, and that's why we go to the shows. And I'm sure, Justin, you too, you're on different Facebook groups trying to see what people are looking for, or what they're chronically short on, or what have you.
And
in
you know,
my,
I'm jumping in. Heather's business is very different than our business. Heather's business, they're a breeder, so they're actually creating new things. Whereas here at Costa Farms, we have a plant hunter who travels the world, and he's looking for new varieties. So he goes to plant markets and plant shows, and deals with breeders like Duman, and small breeders. So for Costa, it takes at least 5 years in most cases to bring a plant to market, because our plant hunter might go to Southeast Asia, find something amazing. He's only able to get 3 plants. He has to import them to the United States. There's a whole testing process. And then once it passes the test, then you have to build up enough stock to be able to grow the hundreds of thousands necessary to supply the North American market. And
You
so
know,
it really is a mission. Sorry, Diane,
no,
bringing
no,
new
this
plants
is-
to the world.
It is. And you brought up something that I think is very interesting. I was giving a presentation to garden communicators a couple of weeks ago, and we were talking about how international, how worldwide our industry is. And that is nowhere as apparent as it is in the foliage and houseplant market. I mean, isn't it fair to say like the orchids are primarily from Asia, and everything that you look at today in this probably comes from a different continent or a different country, just because so many of maybe they came from the tropical rainforest and now they're here and they're being used as houseplants in most parts of North America.
And then on top of that, the what we call the inputs that go into the what's presented at the retail, all of that's coming from everywhere. I mean, the container, the pottery might be from China or Thailand. The soil might be from Indonesia or the peat bogs up in Canada. And then you have your plant, which a lot of times comes from an offshore facility. And then it's all brought to the US and grown and put together, and all of that just to, get that one plant to the market and to make people happy. I mean, that's what we're bringing.
Yeah, exactly. It is that way for all components of our industry. And I always say, we're not making widgets, we're not producing millions of nuts and bolts that can sit on the counter. We are all producing live products, and there's a lot of nuances, a lot of risk, and a ton of reward. But if anybody ever says, well, why can't I get this? Well, it's a living, breathing product, and we can't just, store it for forever, but it's all a really good thing because such beautiful things. So are you guys ready to talk about some of your new varieties? Should we get into our picture show here?
Yeah.
Sounds great.
Okay, so I did do this alphabetically. So we've got a C and a D. So it's pretty close. So Justin, we will start with you, and you'll just have to tell me when you're ready for me to move on to the next slide after each one.
All right. So speaking of pink being hot, Costa Farms is really excited about a new cordyline variety called Mini-Me. This is if you're familiar with old school cordylines, they're usually sold at plant shops in 10-inch pots, 10-inch diameter pots, and the plants are usually 2 to 3 feet tall when you get them. This is a tabletop size. It probably gets 3 feet max. If you keep it indoors for 5-10 years. Has dark green leaves. They emerge pink, and then as they mature, the pink or the green center grows, and so it's just that nice pink edge. This is a highlight plant. If you want it to have best color, the less light it gets, the more green it's going to be. But happily, it does really well in both natural, artificial light, or a combination of both. So if you don't have a super bright desk, you can have like a little LED lamp on the top, and it's just a stunning showpiece. Color helps it stand out from a lot of other houseplants, and it's a great complement to like the silver, the white variegated, like we were talking about a minute ago, to just give you that pop of interest in your collection.
And I love how you took the picture of it on a desktop with the pencils here and everything. Not sure how many people still use pencils, but that was a good photographic effort there.
They always make for good props.
Exactly. Yeah, that's beautiful.
One of the hottest categories within houseplants is aroids, the aroid plant family. Pothos, philodendron, monstera are three of the kind of big poster children for this, but alocasia or elephant's ear is really coming up strong after that. And this is a brand new one, comes from the Philippines, actually named after the first female president of the Philippines. And it has that traditional elephant's ear shaped leaf, but it's green with a really lovely silvery blue overlay. This will get about the same size as your traditional like alocasia poly. So maybe a foot and a half tall. Like most alocasia prefers bright light and average to above average relative humidity. Can do average humidity just fine if you keep it well watered. If it dries out, I definitely prefer, or I definitely recommend doing it in above average humidity.
Great. You answered my question. I was going to ask how it's hard to tell with this pot, like how big it would get. So you said about a foot and a half.
Yep. This is
Okay.
about the size that we grow it to go into garden centers. And then, with good care, you can get it about twice this size.
Okay, great.
So really fun specimen plant. This one is really interesting to me. It's a brand new Dieffenbachia. And I have to admit, I never thought that I would be excited by a new Dieffenbachia. Maybe a little bit of plant snobbery in me. But it's a sport of Camille that has these really fun, creamy centers, but then they have bright white margins. And so it's a brand new variegation pattern for Dieffenbachia. It's a compact variety like Camille, so it won't get big. It won't reach the ceiling like some of the big old school Dieffenbachia maculata as well. And another thing that's really great about it is that it suckers like crazy, so you can see how full this plant is. It's just always going to be producing offshoots like that. Nice, full, lush plant with that killer variegation. And like any other Dieffenbachia, super easy to grow, tolerates low light, tolerates inconsistent watering. Really fun desk or tabletop plant here.
Excellent.
White aspen is a Dracaena. It's a white variegated corn plant, first one that we've seen. And going back to the process of introducing a plant, this actually won Best New Plant at the Tropical Plant Industry Exhibition a few years ago. And then we had some stock issues. And so it's just now coming to market finally. But really fun, like any other Dieffenbachia, tolerates low light, tolerates low humidity. We're going to be growing it in a 6-inch diameter pot, so nice tabletop size. But if you give it good care over time, you can get it to be just this really majestic floor plant. And again, have that pride and accomplishment of doing something fun with it. I see a note in the chat, if the Dieffenbachia is produced through tissue culture or vegetative cuttings, it can be grown both ways. Here at Costa Farms, because we're just launching it now, building up numbers, most of it is coming from tissue culture.
Okay. So the Dieffenbachia. Okay,
Yep.
great. And then you did the Dracaena. So I'm kind of skipping around on you, but trying to be helpful. Don't know if I am or not. Okay, here we go.
So Esqueleto is a really fun variety of Monstera. It has big leaves. The photos don't show it well here, but each one of those leaves is like 18 to 24 inches long. It's a vine, has that really beautiful fenestration. Really just an amazing impact showpiece plant. We found that fenestration is still really hot with plant parents. They love the idea of having the cuts and the slits in the plant leaves for extra and added texture. And having a big vine that grows fast is a really nice upside for a houseplant like this.
That's what I was going to ask too, is about vining plants. We were talking earlier about big versus small. Are vines, they must be pretty hot now?
Absolutely. Climbing, trailing plants. A lot of people are growing their climbers on totems or moss poles now. And a nice benefit of doing that with a lot of aroids, the philodendrons, the pothos, for example, is that you can get much larger leaves. And it is so interesting how you can completely change the feel of even an everyday average pothos, when those leaves start to get 12, 16, even 20 inches long.
Very cool.
White Knight philodendron is another climber. It's slower because it has that crisp white variegation, but really, really beautiful. Each leaf is different, so it's like a work of art. One of the more popular plants has been a variety of philodendron called Pink Princess lately, and this is basically a white variegated cousin of it. Tolerates low light, tolerates inconsistent watering, so it's nice to have plants that are fun, visually attractive, and really good for beginner first-time plant owners as well.
New plant parents.
Exactly. Lemon meringue pothos is a brand new pothos that we're just introducing this year. We found it as a sport of global green. If you're familiar with global green pothos, it has dark green edges with a medium green margin. And there was just this one shoot that decided to put out these gold margins with the medium green centers. We propagated it. We spent a couple of years testing it for stability to make sure that it really does this. And now it's out on the market. So easy like any other pothos. You can grow it pretty much anywhere. I would recommend growing this one in high light. Like the cordyline, the better the light, the stronger that variegation is going to be. If it's in low light, the variegation will fade and it'll be more of a green on green, and kind of a reverse global green look.
That one's making me hungry. I should have had lunch before I had this.
I know, me too.
Yeah, exactly. Okay.
Schismatoglottis willisii is a mouthful of a name, but it's another aroid, has that sort of caladium or elephant ear look, with these sort of shield or arrow-shaped green leaves, and they have these really lovely irregular silver chevrons in the middle. This is on the thirsty side. And like a lot of the other aroids, once it gets going, these leaves can get like 2 feet long. The plant can get 3 feet tall. So really, really majestic, fun statement plant if you keep it going.
Very impressive.
And last up, Chameleon ZZ. This is perhaps the easiest houseplant there is to grow. It can go up to a month without watering if it needs to. Tolerates low light like a champ. Doesn't need high humidity. Chameleon is interesting in that the new leaves come out gold, no chlorophyll whatsoever. So you can see like in the upper left. And then as they mature, they start to develop chlorophyll. So those leaves more in the middle that have the mottling. And then as the leaves mature, they have that traditional dark green color. This is another plant that I would really recommend growing in high light, not because the variegation will fade or be any more impactful, but the more light it gets, the faster it grows. And so the more new growth you'll get, and you'll be able to enjoy that look. If you have this one in a really low light spot, it might only produce new leaves once or twice a year. And so you don't get that same effect as if it's putting up a lot of new leaves.
All right. And it looks like you have one question about a common name for this mouthful.
So I have not seen an official common or a commonly used common name in the trade. Internally at Costa Farms, we've been nicknaming it Green Shield because of the shield-shaped leaves. Less of a mouthful than Schismatoglottis willisii.
We should give the audience the opportunity to give it the common name.
Yeah,
Yes.
exactly. Right.
Great idea, Heather.
The floor's
Okay,
open.
so we'll take suggested common names for this plant. You can put them in the chat and let's see what we come up with. That will be interesting. So, okay, thank you so much, Justin. Now I just inserted a couple other houseplants or plants that are usable as houseplants. These are from other NGB members. And so this first one is from Monrovia and it's Begonia Monhert ninetta. So this one I thought was really cool because of those dots or spots on the foliage. And then it does have some nice pale pink rose colored flowers. The other one is this Tradescanthia pistachio white. And what is unique here is that veining and that coloration of the leaf, and it won our Green Thumb Award. So Green Thumb is a program of National Garden Bureau where we recognize unique, trending, just different products. There's something about them that's just not the traditional. So this is from a company called Green Fuse and Pistachio White. So look for that one. And then we too have a colocasia. So this elephant ears is called Royal Hawaiian Waikiki. This is an AAS national winner. So it was in the trial, let's see, this is 23. Last year, it was in the 2022 trials. Excuse me. And so it's that flamingo pink veining that really caught the eye of our judges. And it is definitely a larger one. It'll get about 3 feet tall and 3 feet wide. So I'm looking forward to growing that one outdoors this year. And then I'm hoping to bring it indoors this fall. So those were my 3. Okay, Heather, I think it's your turn now, and we will let you go.
And this is tough to go after Justin and then you showing all those other beautiful products, but I'm going to give it a go. So Duman, one of our companies, as I mentioned, is invested in anthurium breeding. And here I just wanted to show just all the different forms and colors that anthuriums can have. And I think flowering plants indoors is something that's starting to catch on, because a lot of times people think, oh, it flowers, it's going to be harder to grow, harder to take care of, but they're really not. Anthuriums in the right conditions are bulletproof. Their only downfall is they can't take cold weather, but that is like anything below 50 degrees. It usually doesn't get that cool in our houses. So once you get it home, you're going to have flowers for months on end and really easy to take care of foliage. Here I wanted to show, and this is for some reason, having a yellow anthurium is like the holy grail of anthurium breeding. Everyone wants to have this yellow anthurium, but I find the colors much more interesting and beautiful. At the top, we show a pink, which also has some green accents on it. And then in the bottom corner, this is a red that we're working on. And instead of having like the classic anthurium where it's kind of upright and you get like 3 to 4 large flowers, you get almost a bouquet type of look with that. It's a smaller plant, but it's better for like centerpieces on tabletops and things. We're also just working on different, not variegated, but bicolors. Purples are really big, oranges are big. The black, I know we talked about black plants not being as trendy right now, but at TPIE this year, the black anthuriums we had in the booth were really one of the biggest draws, just because they are so dramatic looking still.
So is it the foliage or the quote quote flower that is black, or is it both?
It's both, and it's just really glossy. So I think when you have like a dark colored plant, but it's still really glossy, it's interesting. The light's going to hit it, and then it's going to show up inside or on a patio.
And it would look good in combination with things too. I bet it would make some others really pop, or one of these foliage plants that had some white leaves in them, that would look really awesome.
And I've seen a lot of like smaller anthuriums, like in your like little 7-centimeter pot going into dish gardens, because they add the height. So you can have that then like with a little fern and a hypoestes or something, and you just get the classic, what is it, thriller, spiller, what's the other one called? Filler, yeah.
Filler and filler, yeah.
So you get that in your dish gardens with the pop of color.
Okay, you gave me an idea for another webinar, is all kind of dish garden ideas. We can do that one.
That would be fun.
Okay.
This is one of our introductions this year. It's just your Crassula variegata, but you can just see it has the variegation, which we've mentioned, which is very popular. Instead of it being white, it has the gold. It's really nice in hanging baskets. This one looks a little bit bird nested. It had been in a trade show for several days at this point, but it can also be done in small pot production. So with our foliage programs, we try to come up with selections that can go anywhere from like small pot to a hanging basket or something like that. So from a 2-inch for terrarium gardeners to your baskets. We don't have a lot of like the really dramatic specimen pieces like Justin had to show. So this is one of our introductions. It's really waterized because it is your crasula, but it'll still do well indoors.
And Heather, we have a question about when will these new plants hit the big box stores or nurseries or garden centers? Are these ones that are just now becoming available to your customers?
To growers, right? So you
Okay.
would see them in the second half of this year.
Okay.
And I do, not to, you know, I do know someone is picking this up and it will be in box stores.
Okay.
That's
Okay.
all I'm
Well,
gonna
that's
say.
good. So in some ways you're getting a sneak peek by 6 months. In some ways you're getting a sneak peek in just a month or two. So all these are things to look for throughout the coming year.
I have to mention orchids. It is the year of the orchid, and Duman does have an orchid breeding company called Sogo. They've been breeding orchids in Taiwan for over 100 years. And Duman, they joined the Duman conglomerate, I don't know what to call us, the Duman company about 5 years ago. And so they do everything from like the large cascades and it's all Phalaenopsis, but they have the classic ones, but they really hang their hat on the mini breeding. And I think this is where we're going to see the more interesting flowers, product forms coming to the market in the near future. We're already starting to see this from some growers and out there. And the minis, they can be grown in a small pot and they tend to bloom closer to the foliage. So you don't end up with that big space. You know, your classic Phalaenopsis, you have foliage, then you might have 18 inches of stem and then you have flowers. And it's like, well, what do you fill in between that? But with the minis, you get just a spray of orchids. Some of them are lightly scented, and you can just see the colors that come out of it are just, they're amazing. There's a product form that some people picked up, which is called 100 flowers. And this is where you can take multiple plants in a deco container. And so you end up with like over 100 flowers from just like 4 to 5 plants. And the effect is spectacular and it looks fantastic. Again, tabletops and up at the eye level rather than being down on the ground where someone looks down on it.
Those sound really neat. So on the minis, about how tall do they get, did you say?
Probably like 18 to 24 inches is the spec that most people want to see them in. Some of them are even shorter than that, like down to like 12 inches, and that's from the bottom of the pot to the top of the stem. But the most desired inch, is the 18 to 24 inches for those.
Okay. And we have somebody asking about the scent. What does an orchid smell like?
I lightly like a sweet pea, I guess.
Okay.
It's a light, or maybe like a primula, kind of just one of those light floral scents. It's not overwhelming like a gardenia or something like that.
Yeah.
But it's still, it's pleasant. It's nice because you don't expect it from an orchid.
Right.
And this is, I mean, there's of course the program. I think Green Circle has just Add Ice. Orchids are so easy to take care of, and you get that really long. Yes, it is a fragrance is something that we are doing some breeding towards, and eventually we'd want to have a full line to offer of a scented collection that a grower could do.
That's very exciting. I love that. I know that a lot, the rose breeders and everybody are trying to bring the scent back in.
Yeah.
And so then putting it into the orchid is wonderful. And I'm so glad you put the slide in here. I should have put our logo being the year of the orchid. So that's wonderful. Gail put a link to our article, which I have to tell the story about Gail and I with our year of programs. So every year, we come out with 6 year of programs, houseplant, annual, perennial, et cetera. And the two of us are always kind of like, oh, okay. So it's the year of the orchid. And then we start getting the pictures in, and then we read the article that somebody writes for us, one of our members write. And all of a sudden, Gail and I are looking at each other like, oh my gosh, there's so many new things coming here. Oh, I hadn't thought about trying this. I have to go out and buy some now. I went out and bought some orchids. I went out and bought some amaryllis. So the whole program is meant to be inspirational, and it works on us. And we're kind of jaded people here in the office, but it works on us. So hopefully it works on everybody else too.
I will advise everyone on this webinar to go get an orchid right after this. You will love it. It's easy to care for. When it's done blooming, which you'll have 3 months of flowers, cut the spikes off, just leave it alone and throw water on it every so often. Months later, you'll start getting spikes again. I think the number one thing that destroys orchids is when people get too fussy with them.
Right, right.
And
Which is true for a lot of houseplants, you know.
yeah, of course,
It's
of course.
over nurturing, over watering, etc., is usually the reason most of them are killed or die or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's okay. Okay, we'll go on here.
So these are a couple peperomias that we have. String of turtles, super trendy, popular plant. It's slow growing. So we've been slowly building our stock for it. This will be one of our 2024 introductions that we'll have for growers. So we'll be seeing more of the string of turtles on the market. It's been very hard to find, sporadic. It's just an adorable little plant in 2-inch all the way up to the small baskets. Peperomia mojo or mojo, however you want to say it. This has been in the program, but I think it's overlooked. People tend to grow it where they'll multi-stick it and then try to sell it when it's only a couple inches tall. However, if you hold on to this plant, if there's any growers on the call, please do this. If you hold on to this plant and let the stems grow, it's just a really beautiful, elegant type of statement piece, whether it's in a basket or in an upright pot. I mean, it almost looks like a weeping olive plant or something like that to me. And this peperomia, the species of which I just left my mind, so drought tolerant, just it can be ignored it can go 8 to 10 weeks without water. I know because I left one at my father's house and he didn't water it well for 8 to 10 weeks, still living. So another great plant.
And somebody is asking, how tall is that one, the mojo one? How tall in this picture is that one?
Yeah, it's about, the fronds will go up about 12 inches and then they'll start to arch down. And I'm not even sure, because I haven't seen it ever grow out long enough, how long the stems can get. So another fun activity we can all do is get a peperomia mojo and let it grow.
Let it grow.
Let it grow.
And come up with the tallest one, right?
That's right. Next year we can all report back about how long the stems got.
We'll hold you to that.
This is another super exciting introduction for this year. This is the Pereschia aculeata variegata. It is a native to Central America, and it starts out with this beautiful chartreuse golden foliage. And as the new growth comes out, it's hot pink. And then as the golden leaves mature, they get this like lime green variegation on it. So you get all these tones and colors on it. It's a bit of a rambler. I think in a 6-inch pot, you might want to have a tall pot where it can be allowed to kind of go up and then ramble down, or be good in baskets. What's interesting about Pereschia is, well, there's so many interesting things about it. It does produce a flower. It does produce a fruit that's edible. The foliage has medicinal value also. And it is one of the first true cactus. Like a lot of cactus, I know it's crazy. A lot of cactus species evolved from Pereschia. So as the plant gets a little bit older, it does start to develop some thorns on it, but they're really soft. So they don't prick or anything like that, but there's definitely a little bit of thorns in there. So it's a fascinating plant. It's a beautiful plant, and it's easy to grow too. Yeah.
That's always key. Easy
always
to grow.
key. Easy to grow.
Let's help everyone.
Philodendron Brazil. Justin had the pothos with these types of tones. Philodendron Brazil is not new, but it's new to Duman. We've been building up our stock for about 2 years, and we finally have it ready for growers to start bringing in. Brazil's just wildly popular. It's philodendrons, so it's obviously very, very easy, fast growing, and you still get that variegation in the apple green tones in it.
Very nice.
And yes, I did bring dark foliage into this. but you can see that they're glossy. So Raisinette, it's a commercial variety from last year. It's done very well, but just talking about color and foliage, it's such a vibrant red, and when the sun hits it, it kind of gets that stained glass type of look to it. The Pilea chocolate was a late introduction. There's been very little of it on the market, but it's interesting in that it is a Pilea, but it has a larger leaf. So as the plant matures, the leaf can get really large, like an Acalifa, like, you know, the tropical looking ones. And then it has a flower that to me is reminiscent almost of like a lace leaf hydrangea. It's like an apple green flower that really flatly overlays the leaf. So you get this like really interesting texture, and then you have that kind of lime green flower that makes the dark foliage kind of pop a little bit. So it's really interesting. I hope more people pick it up, and we do see more of it on the market.
So I've got a quick question actually for both of you, because Heather, I see the little tag in here that says "Welcome to the Jungle."
Mhm.
So would your varieties carry that tag or that brand at retail?
That would be up to whichever grower decides. The branding's available if they wanted to pick it up from a tag company, but it's not something we require.
Okay, and Justin, then would everybody be able to see the Costa brand on yours at retail, or is it kind of the same answer?
For most of our new varieties, we are introducing them under our Trending Tropicals collection.
Trending.
And so they will be marketed as Costa Farms Trending Tropicals.
Okay, that's good. I love all these names. Okay, I think Heather, we're back to the last couple of slides for you.
Ripsalis, I love Ripsalis. There's so many species. They're really interesting to me. And they have everything from like your really fine foliage to the wider kind of chunkier foliage that you see there. There's dwarf varieties. Again, this is a really easy plant to grow. It has so many uses. I think it's adorable when it's used in like the wall hangers or spilling out of an urn or something like that. In a basket, because it's going to need such little water, you don't have to worry about watering it and it dripping down on your floor. It's one that we're really excited to have in production. It is protected because they don't want people going out into the jungles or into the native habitats and stealing the plants. And that's how you end up with what's called the CITES type of regulations. So it's one of those that's protected like that. So we had to go through a lot of hoops to get them on the farm and get them into production. And I think for us to be able to offer these types of plants and have them out there, it would prevent people from wanting to go and poach in the jungles.
So I'm seeing that one on, it's on my right, the fine leafed one. Wouldn't that be cool in one of those head urn things?
Yes,
and then you could use that
yeah.
as the hair. I'm just seeing that's perfect. So you have to plant one of those up and send me a picture of it.
All right.
That's what I want to see it.
You'll see that at Cast.
Okay, awesome. Yeah. Look forward to it. And the shark fin.
And the shark fin. So we've had the epiphyllum was called what is it? Fishbone cactus, rickrack cactus. We usually call it rickrack because fishbone just sounds kind of creepy. So this is shark fin, and it has chunkier foliage. It's just really dramatic. It kind of looks like a fern, but the foliage is a little bit softer than the rickrack cactus. And it being in that same genus, sorry. It is, again, really water-wise. We think it would be really cool to be used, like people that get into like Boston ferns, everyone wants to hang their ferns on their porches and they shed and they slowly die. But if you use like shark fin or the other epiphyllums that we have, you're not going to be watering as much. You're going to have that same green, dramatic, arching type of look and get to enjoy them longer.
Excellent. Okay, that is it for our slideshow. So I'm going to quit sharing my screen so that we can look at our panelists. And I think the one question that I saw that I wanted to just pop in here was a question about taking care of an Easter cactus. Would one of you like to do that before I start in with some of my questions?
Sure. So Easter cactus typically like medium to bright light. They are considered, so it's interesting. They are a cactus, but like the Ripsalis that Heather was showing, they're an epiphyte. And so you want to water them a little bit differently than the average houseplant. Giving them a good soaking periodically rather than consistent watering to keep the soil always moist is helpful. They do prefer cooler temperatures in the spring to help initiate blooms. They like average to above average relative humidity, and I would definitely keep them away from drafts. So don't put them near like a drafty window, heating or air conditioning vent, because that can really stress them out.
So Justin, I always see that they have their own fertilizer. And so, I mean, I don't know what their exact needs are, but how do their needs differ from like other, I guess, epiphyllums and things like that?
That is a good question. I don't know if I can speak
I
specifically
can't either.
to the differences between that and like an epiphyllum.
Okay.
It may be marketing.
It might, yeah, okay. Good point.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about some other care tips. And I know this is really hard because it's going to be different for the different types of houseplants. Justin, I heard you say highlight a few times. So maybe let's start about how do you define highlight, medium light, when it's inside your house. I know outdoors, shade versus sun, but let's talk about measuring indoor light.
So the easiest way that I like to recommend is I call it the shadow test. And if your plant casts a pretty strong shadow a lot of the day, you can count on that being highlight. If it doesn't cast much of a shadow at all, then it's probably low light. And sort of the minimum recommendation we would give for a low light plant indoors is having enough light to reliably read a book or a magazine without having to turn on another source. And that's throughout most of the day. Light through the window can get interesting because you might have bright light for half an hour of the day, depending on the tree situation, the orientation of your house. But that doesn't necessarily mean the spot is bright light. Think of it from a cumulative, like an average standpoint, rather than in specific moments.
And what about, we use grow lights to start our seeds and everything. Do you have any recommendations or comments on artificial lighting to help your houseplants?
I use LED shop lights to help augment mine. My office window, there's a big liquid ambar tree right outside it, so it doesn't get nearly as much light as it should, even though it's a south facing. And so I've hung a couple of LED shop lights next to the window to augment, so the plants get that nice mix of natural and artificial. But you can absolutely do pure artificial light if you want.
And what about too much light? I mean, some houseplants, I'm not sure which ones they are, but I've heard that some houseplants could actually burn from too much light or heat coming in through the glass. What should you be careful with there?
So if your plants get exposed to too much light, you'll often see the new leaves first, and then the old leaves later start to have bleached appearances. And that can happen either because the light itself is too intense, or like a lot of our plants, we grow them under pretty deep shade, so they're well acclimated to a home environment. But if you bring them from that deep shade right next to a really strong grow light, for example, even though they can take more light, they're not used to it, and so that burning can happen as well.
Yeah, I have a Maranta that I torture, and I'll move it to different windows to see if it burns or not, to kind of gauge what my light level is. Because I know if it burns, it's highlight, and then I'll start moving it back until it's happy again. I'm like, okay, that's where the low light starts.
So that plant for you is kind of like the canary in the coal mine.
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
It's still alive. I mean, it's doing well.
There is another question here, I think on the LED, blue, red, or purple for houseplants and 8 or 12 hours daily is the question.
So you can do the colored lights if you really want to. In my experience, it doesn't make that much of a difference in the home environment. If you're growing them for production and you want optimal growth, then the colored lights might differ depending on what species you're trying to grow and what your objectives are. But I just use the regular daylight bulbs. And in terms of how long, again, that's going to depend a little bit on the type of plant you're growing and what you want from the plant. If it's a really strong light, if it's 5,000 lumens, for example, you may only need it on 8 hours to give your plant the amount of light. If it's a really high light needing plant, then you might want to keep it on 10 or 12, to build up that accumulation of light. So I know not a nice straightforward answer, but that's one of the challenges with dealing with living things.
Dealing with living things and having a broad category such as houseplants. And I was going to ask both of you, and I'm sorry, I should know this, but on your website, do you have more detailed by each type of plant? Like the highlight, low light, is that on your website, or do you recommend a website that would have all this in detail like that?
I mean, what Justin and I touched on earlier is because we're working with growers, and usually the growers then or the retailer handle having that information. Like if you go to the Dooman website, you're going to find how to propagate the plants and how many cuttings go into it and the crop times and things like that.
On costafarms.com, you can certainly go and get light needs, recommendation, water, fertilizer, humidity for pretty much every plant that we grow.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. So we've got a resource for growers and got a resource for homeowners. That's perfect. And you did bring up water. So let's talk about that. Is it true? Is the number one problem is that people overwater or underwater?
Over.
It's a lot harder for a plant from overwatering than underwatering because the roots suffocate and die. Whereas with underwatering, they're just not getting enough moisture. And so it takes a lot longer to kill them. And if you don't have healthy roots, you can't have a healthy plant.
And then overwatering brings in the diseases, the fungus, the fungus gnats, and all the other pests. It really leaves the plants that are already weakened really susceptible to all of that.
And what about
Sorry, I always say if you're in doubt about whether you should water your plant, it's best to wait.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good. And what about the type of water? So many of us live in urban situations and maybe we have chlorinated water. Can the plants handle the chlorinated water? Should you let it sit out like you do for your, goldfish or whatever, you have to leave it sit out?
I think as long as you're watering so it leaches, and so, you see the water coming through the bottom. I mean, yeah, it's probably be better if you weren't using tap water, you don't know what's in it, and who wants to go do an analysis or something like that. But for the average homeowner, just make sure you're making it's going all the way through the soil.
And yeah, in most municipalities, for most houseplants, your tap water is going to be just fine. Chlorine gets to be a little complicated because old school chlorine is a gas, and so it will evaporate out. But a lot of municipalities have switched to a product called chloramine, which does not evaporate out. And so letting your water sit out overnight can actually increase the amount of chlorine in it just a touch, because the water is evaporating, but the chlorine level in it is not. Now, for a lot of the houseplants that have a reputation for being sensitive to water, especially like the dracaenas, the cordylines, the spider plants, it's fluoride that they're more sensitive to than the chlorine. And fluoride doesn't evaporate out. Now, an easy thing to do, or an easier thing than buying special water, if you do have water that's especially high in like fluoride, for example, is you can dilute your tap water with distilled or bottled water, which, as strange as it sounds to dilute water, but bringing in more water that doesn't have as much of the compound, is a simple way to do it.
What might be the signs that there's too much fluoride in the water? I mean, it's signs on the plant. Other than
With,
healthy teeth for us, what are the signs on the plants?
with dracaenas and spider plants, for example, it often starts as brown leaf tips, and then it expands into the leaf edges, which I know is not at all helpful, because that same symptom can be caused by low humidity, irregular watering, not enough water. And so there's a lot of sort of trial and error, or doing a test to diagnose it specifically.
And somebody had asked if it's better to water from the top or the bottom.
I would say, I mean, for the homeowner, like the top, so it goes all the way down through it, rather than, you don't want it standing in water just waiting to leach up. And I know like ficus are really sensitive to standing in water. A lot of plants are really sensitive to that.
I do bottom watering for a lot of my plants.
Fine, Justin.
I'm sorry.
I was joking. I was like, fine.
Just different points of view. Like Costa Farms, for example, the retailers want gift ready plants, and so Costa Farms grows in ceramic pots, and the retailers want them to be furniture friendly, so they don't have drainage holes. And I found that that's a really easy way to care for my plants. I'll pour like an inch or two of water in the ceramic pot. 15 minutes later, I'll take the grower pot out, see what's left. If there is anything, dump it out. And that's a way that I can kind of maintain mine. Certainly nothing wrong with top watering. And as Heather said, the most important thing is that you're never letting the pot sit in water for more than about a half hour, 45 minutes.
Excellent. And we've got a question about collecting rainwater for houseplants.
I think if you live somewhere where it rains regularly, then I mean, rain does have minerals and things. There's nothing wrong with doing that. Unfortunately, not all of us live in places where it rains regularly.
Andy, let's hear. Wow, we only have a couple minutes left. Do you want to talk about humidity? On average, do most houseplants like a more humid environment?
Yes, most houseplants come from tropical rainforest regions where humidity is a little bit higher than what we have, especially if we live in the north and we're heating our homes in the winter. But if you're maintaining your plants well, the average houseplant is going to power through low humidity okay.
It goes back to that tolerant thing, like when things are sunlight tolerant, which doesn't mean they love it. It just means they'll live. And so, yeah, things that when we say drought tolerant, low humidity tolerant, it's not ideal, but they're fine.
And the more stress they're under from other types of conditions, the more susceptible they are to stress from humidity. So if your plant is frequently underwatered, for example, it may be more likely to complain about low humidity levels than if it's watered the way that it wants to be, or if it's near a draft.
And I think maybe we can wrap up with this question then, because I had heard, so I don't know if this is true. I'm in the Chicagoland area, and I was told that maybe March would be a good time to start fertilizing my plants, maybe with a half strength. So I want to know from the experts if that's true.
I mean, a lot of plants, when they're indoors, they're not actively growing. It would depend on, I would say it depends on active growth, if you're seeing growth or anything.
So I used to live in Des Moines, Iowa. And it was usually March, April when I started to see my houseplants put on growth again. And that was the measure for me to start fertilizing is okay, they're growing more. The more they grow, the more nutrients they want in an ideal situation. Now, an easy way to deal with fertilizing your houseplants is to use like a time release fertilizer. That
Okay.
way, they're always getting small amounts of nutrients, and there's less waste. If they're not needing it or not necessarily using it up.
I'll
Okay.
admit, I do the old school fish emulsion. It's kind of stinky, but it's supposed to be kind of organic at the same time. I don't know why I started doing it.
The
As
question
long
on
as
the
it works.
It
Yeah,
works. Yeah,
exactly.
it
If it
does
works
work.
for you, just show us your houseplants and then we'll know if it's working for you.
Let me go get that Maranta.
So Justin, on the slow release, I was thinking more of the pellets that go in, but somebody asked, what about those Job's sticks? Would that be an acceptable houseplant slow release?
They should be, yeah. I've personally never used those. But from my understanding of that product, it is time release, and over the course of weeks or months, the sticks do degrade and the nutrients leach out for your plant.
Okay. So the key is slow release there then. Oh my goodness. Okay. We have gone over our hour, which this happens every time because we have our experts that are so interesting and have so much to offer us. But with that, I think we have to wrap it up for this Friday. And now everybody has to go out and buy their orchids and buy their
Exactly.
peperomia and all these other houseplants and make lists of things that you want. We did record this, and so I will send out a link to this recording in case anybody wants to look at it again, listen, make a list of all the plants that you want. So thank you, Justin. Thank you, Heather. A lot of great information. We've got more webinars coming up this spring on other topics. So check out the NGB website for all the upcoming webinars. And thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you for hosting, Diane, and thanks so
Yeah.
much for everybody for coming to spend the time with us.
Yeah, thanks so much.